So this is a week in having been using this Xtrons head unit, E39 specific, BMW E39 specific. It's a PT1839B and it's a 10.25 inch touchscreen, no physical buttons, albeit the steering wheel buttons, you know, are handy for most functions. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the things that I've found. This might be interesting if you're thinking about getting one, and it'll be very dull if you're not interested in these at all. So what can I tell you? So talk a little bit, it's going to be mostly about problems, to be fair, which is a bit unfair, but that's probably what I've got most to say about. On the whole though, it's been working very well. Compared to the standard head unit that was effectively just a radio, it does so much more. I'm using it for Bluetooth calls. You can stream Bluetooth music to it, but mostly I'm using it for the radio, Waze navigation app, and Spotify music. A little bit about Waze. It has been crashing. I don't know why yet. It's not particularly stable, but it does boot straight back up again and picks up your destination. I found it was a bit odd. It will route when you've got no data connection, but it just does really elongated routes via like major roads only. So I would say don't do that. There's also an issue if you turn your volume down. Say there's music on, you don't want to listen to, you turn the volume down, there's no separate volume control for the navigation voice commands. And I also had to do a bit of work balancing the audio levels, and that's not straightforward. You have to go into the settings app here, then go into this like locked out settings menu, passwords 3368, and in there under one of these menus, volume balance settings, and there I had to turn everything else down to minimum. That's not off, by the way, that's just down some, and navigation up to full, which is just up some, and at that point, especially when you're on the road, when you're driving along motorway speeds, it could be quite hard to hear the navigation commands without having the radio or the music really loud. So I found, as bizarre as that looks, that actually just sounds about right. So that's that bit. Something else which is completely normal, but I just didn't appreciate it, is when you first get in the car, the unit's been off. The GPS just takes a few minutes just to pick up signals, which if you're used to using your phone for navigation, obviously your phone's always on. That isn't a thing, but it did kind of cause me to scratch my head at first, but obviously that's just to be expected, really. Getting onto this launcher here, I did install an aftermarket, different non-included launcher, which is, if you don't know about Android head units, it's basically this app screen you get that the unit defaults to. I tried a different one and I've actually uninstalled that for now. You know, there's a lot of choice, you can do a lot with them. I'm just looking for something that's quite simple to use. I'm not looking for any flashy features, really. What I don't like about the standard one is you can't configure this home screen. You can choose what navigation app you use. Music is the included music player for playing WAVs or MP3s. Radio is a radio. Bluetooth is actually the Bluetooth phone function. Settings is useful. Video is the included video player app. You can't change that music app as far as I can see. But what you can do, which I found, was swipe that way and you can configure this page. So these are the apps that I've included. If you want to look at all your apps, you press this button down here, and then you've got, you know, pages of all the apps you've you've downloaded, which you don't really want to be having to wade through if you're driving. So what I found that was nice was that you can get to most stuff through here, but if you can configure the second page, which is easy to get to. Yeah, so another slight annoyance, I was quite enjoying the split screen thing that was going on. So when you get here, if you're used to Apple, this button up here just basically is like double tapping your home screen where you can see what apps are open, and you can bring to the front. On Android, this is where you can split screen things. So you can put Waze over there, and you could then say have your, oh no, not your radio. That's my point. Some apps are split screen compatible, some aren't. So so here, if you wanted to have Spotify and Waze split screen, you've got to open them both up like this. Come back to Waze, move it over there, then open Spotify here. But what I found was if you get out your car, turn it off, come back to it after a power cycle, it loses that kind of setup, which is a little bit of a shame. I think because I've also set it to automatically launch the navigation app, which is Waze, although it's not done that now for some reason. I think when you turn your ignition off and back on again, it doesn't actually shut the unit down. It just puts it into a sleep mode. I think it's got to be off for a little bit longer to go into an off. And those two different power cycles do different things. So that was something to note. Screen brightness. It's a really nice bright screen, even in blazing sunshine. Not that there's been an awful lot of that. So I have been using it set up for maximum brightness, with the car lights turned off, so like daytime driving, and then when the lights go on, nighttime driving on minimum brightness. Minimum brightness isn't that dark. It's probably a little bit too bright still for me. There might be some further configuration I can do to change that. But what I've actually done, you can choose to have the brightness automatically adjusted by your light setting on your car, or you can also choose to have it configured depending on the time of day, which I've just started using and not really had a chance to see how well that works. But because I drive with lights on generally, I was finding that the screen was dimming, and that wasn't ideal. I also had an issue with radio interference, and from Googling around, I found that wasn't unheard of, especially on cars, like European cars that have got powered antennas. So in the boot, the antenna's built into the glass on this car, and there's a booster in the back that needs a power signal, a power feed, that's normally provided by the standard head unit. There was some question over whether this head unit did that or not, and that would go some way to explaining the bad signal. So someone on the forum, on the Facebook group, recommended like a really cheap £4 part that basically replaces the antenna adapter, because the antenna plug on this is DIN, and the car uses a FACRA. I don't know if that's pronounced right. Xtrons provide an adapter for that. This was a different adapter that then also joins onto the blue antenna power output of the head unit, and basically provides phantom power and voltage down the coaxial cable to the antenna amplifier. Anyway, I tried that and it didn't make any difference, which was a bit disappointing. But ploughing around through the menus, as you do, I found an option in this kind of locked out settings menu. There is an option for maybe it's not in this menu. Oh yeah, an option for antenna normally on, right? that was turned on. And turning it off sorted out my interference. I'll try and show you that. Radio 4 with like a lot of talking and silences.
Between the beginning of film.
Right.
Country lanes.
So this is how it was. If I turn this up,
they represent a hope for happiness.
You can hear that kind of constant low-level interference.
Like no other.
And then when you go to settings, this locked out menu, antenna normally on, put that on off. Don't really know what that does, but when you go back to the radio, it's interference is gone.
Television, Mariti and Gilbert Carpentier.
So that was good, but I don't know what that does or why it does it, but that might answer some questions. What have I covered? What did I want to say? Radio interference launcher, talked about that. Sound, oh, sound, okay, right. Sound quality, a bit hard to say. It's just the standard speakers in this car. It's pretty similar to the standard radio, but like I say, difficult to quantify. There is an equalization EQ menu. Where is it? Under the sound options equalizer, and I'm finding it quite inconsistent. Sometimes I think it sounds a bit shit. You open the EQ app and it's just reverted to like a standard standard settings, and then you basically go to standard and back to user, and then it sorts itself out. There's not an awful lot you can do this EQ, like that's not 10 dB. The amount of control you have, even with the sliders up to full and down to 0, it's not as much as you might expect. I'm having to do a lot of EQ and pull a lot of the kind of mid and mid-high out just to try and make the bottom end sound a little bit better. But again, standard speakers. On the standard head unit, I had the bass up to full and the treble down a little bit just to try and balance it, make it sound a bit better. I talked a bit before about having to balance the sources. That was basically to get the voice navigation commands louder than everything else. And again, I showed you how to do that. But so that's kind of where I am so far. Talk a little bit about what I'm looking forward to. I've got a Resla interface coming soon. That's basically an interface between the car's iBus and it converts that to USB that this head unit can use with an app called the iBus app, which is that. That should come this week. That gives you a lot of the OEM computer functionality, as well as extra stuff where you can control what information goes onto the instrument cluster, also known as the IKE. What I'd also like to try and do is find a way of configuring the steering wheel buttons. There is an app to do that, but it does nothing. It's this one, Steer. I don't know if that's because this is supplied as a specific E39 head unit, and although this app's included, it's locked out, or the functionality is locked out, but nothing happened. You press buttons on the steering wheel, you press buttons on here, nothing kind of goes on. So I'm suspecting that's locked out. One of the Facebook group members has said that he's got the Resla interface, and that gave him additional steering wheel functionality. So I'm hoping, well, for example, being able to skip tracks forwards and backwards through Spotify. That doesn't work as standard. It's on one of the Xtrons forums as being unsupported, but apparently this Resla interface allows additional button mapping to take place, which should be good. It'd be nice to be able to, so on my E46 I'd connect to interface between my Parrot car kit and the iBus steering wheel controls, and I could basically press the voice command button on the steering wheel and that would launch Siri on my iPhone, so I could dictate text messages, get it to read emails, and voice control or call people through voice control. I can't seem to do that at the moment. You obviously can press and hold a button on your phone, but it'd be nice to see if I can get that working in some way. And the final thought on the data connection, I have been so far tethering my iPhone via Wi-Fi to the head unit. It works when you do it, but you've got to basically, on an iPhone, go to the hotspot page before it'll happen. Once you've got the hotspot page open, the head unit does automatically connect via Wi-Fi, but I'm thinking it's not ideal. I might just go ahead and buy the USB or a USB 4G data dongle and get a kind of pay-as-you-go data card for it, just so you haven't got to do that. It's not a great step to have to do every time you get in the car. Certainly, I tried the other day using Waze without a data connection, and although it has the maps and it will route, it routes in bizarre routes, bizarre A roads that just completely circumnavigate the most direct, nearest way to go. So anyway, hope that's useful. It's a load of waffle, but there you go. I do waffle.